Hi everyone, welcome back to episode 6. If this is the first video you're watching, I'm your host Janardhan Pashupati for the CLAT podcast. I had the luck of getting ranked 38 in the CLAT back in the day in 2013. Went to National Law School of India University and have had the privilege of helping hundreds of students prepare for the CLAT and crack the CLAT, some of whom are here today. So we were if you haven't checked out the previous parts, go check them out. This episode is brought to you by Target Success, and we'll learn more about that at the end. But we were getting into a really meaty discussion with Hemaang and Aravind. The last episode was very illuminating on how to prepare and support systems. Now we were getting into Hemaang and Arvind's story of ramping up from 80 onwards. We covered 50 to 80 on the mocks, the usefulness of mocks, but ramping up from there being a whole different ballgame. Yeah. So Arvind, if you'd like to, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I believe I left off with newspapers, right?
Yeah.
So using the newspaper as a tool for your CLAT prep, I'm going to be very honest. I did not effectively utilize the newspaper. I wasn't regular with my reading. Like when I felt like it, I read what I wanted to, and that was definitely something I wish that I regret doing. But like now that I've given the exam and I understand the kind of questions that come, I feel like something that's very important is utilizing the paper, because it not only helps you with your GK, and it absolutely does, it also helps you with your reading comprehension. And a good exercise is to try and critically analyze the editorial passages, because there's a lot more to be analyzed there. So when you read and analyze and like remember these facts, especially when you have these options, they come back to you when you visualize those newspaper, the boxes and everything, right? That's kind of how I did it. And that's mostly what advice I have to give for class prep, because my prep was primarily a very short burst after October, when the panic set in that yeah, I'm gonna have to do this. That's when I started seriously preparing for the exam. And like the reading sections, I feel like I didn't have as much of a learning curve there, because like my the level I was at when I started, it didn't change much when I gave the exam also.
Right.
So personally, I don't have as much advice to give there, except like in critical reasoning, there's a lot of concepts that I feel like being very very clear with them and having a good grasp on like assumptions, inferences, and things like that will absolutely help you, because that's not something that you can learn. You need to understand it, solve as many questions as you can, and then understand the intricacies of each and every question and how these principles are applied.
Yeah.
So that's something you need to get accustomed to
Awesome.
when you're giving the exam. And apart from that, the math section, I'm just absolutely not going to say a word about the math section. I'm no one to say anything about it. But like I used to consider myself like I used to consider that as like my scoring section. Like that's my 15 on 15 if I had to, because quantitative is like, I was like, yeah, I'm a PCM student, I'm doing calculus. What is quantitative, right? And then the CLAT exam rolled around, and we know what happened. So I feel like another important thing, especially with the question that you asked initially, which is those 2 hours, how you give the exam.
Yeah.
I feel like I have a lot to offer there, because one, my experience with ALET really taught me that
Yes.
adaptability is key. This is something I'm going to keep talking about, because the consortium, there's not much because when you prepare for an exam like CLAT, you are preparing for anything, right? So there's not much that the consortium can do to like twist. So what they do twist is the fundamentals of the paper itself, like what happened in ALET.
Right.
And that's when I feel like if you want an edge over the other students, you're gonna have to adapt in those 90 minutes. And in CLAT as well, like the quant section, a lot of people who expected quant and GK to be scoring massively screw that up probably. And people who, like you talked about the ego issue, but like, yeah, I'm a PCM student, I'm gonna get 15 on 15,
Yeah.
probably spent 40 minutes on
Yeah.
quant and then messed up the rest of their paper.
Yeah.
So these are obviously things that it sounds very obvious, but like when you're in that exam pressure, when you're sitting there, exactly, and those bells are going off, it's very difficult to really recall all of these things.
Yeah, it's very, I mean, you can't regroup during the battle. Yeah.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
That's very difficult. And you go, and like I feel like this is very meta in a sense that it's good to also prepare for like when you get thrown off, like what are you going to do, like when you're giving your mocks, let's say put a very strict timeline and say, I messed up the OMR, right? What am I going to do now?
Yes.
Learning to understand that this is not the end of the world. There's still a few questions left. You might edge out a couple ranks. You might get the college you wanted. That's also something you need to keep in mind, because it's because like Hemaang's he had a horror story there where he messed up his roll number in the OMR sheet. If I commend Hemaang for keeping a school in the exam hall, because if I did that, I'd absolutely lose my mind. I'd completely mess up my paper. So obviously, try not to mess up your roll number, but like even if you do, know that it's not the end of the world, and make sure that you're able to regroup even then. And apart from that, this is something that I did. I don't know if it's going to work for everyone, but like I went into the exam with an analog watch, and I set it forward by 5 minutes, and I tried to solve the paper. I think 1 hour 55. So because I'm used to looking at my clock, it's 2 to 4. I used to solve mock calls for 2 to 4. I'm like you get accustomed to the hands itself, right? That picture, and like when you see the hand inching towards 2, you learn that you have to wrap up. Once you get that muscle memory inbuilt, and then you have 5 minutes left, even if you're not able to complete that one last passage, I was like, I have that leeway, right? With that confidence, I gave the paper, and that definitely helped. Because I think the last, I remember, I think it was the electoral bond scheme legal passage that I left for the last to solve at the end, because I gave up on maths. That was supposed to be my last section. I literally looked at it for 5 minutes. I'm like, I'm not doing this. Then I'm like, I have 5 minutes left. You know what? Let me do the legal one that I left. And I ended up getting full in that, all 5 marks in that passage, and like that massive, that completely changed me.
You basically went from NEGs to NLS in that.
NLS, exactly. So those are some things that I did. If that helps, then that should. And also another thing, I'm going a little off topic here that I want to say, but like the CLAT is an exam, like not getting NLS, or like I feel like it's so not a test of your caliber as a it's a terrible test of your caliber as a legal practitioner or anything. So just because you didn't know the GK that came on the exam day, or like just because your headspace wasn't right, that doesn't mean you'd make a bad lawyer or that you should give up. So there's nothing wrong with continuing to pursue law even though you messed up CLAT, or like studying it. There's nothing wrong with that, and I feel like that's something a lot of people should know, because a bunch of my friends who CLAT didn't go well for them, and I will wholeheartedly say that they used to be more consistent with the preparation and everything. They just weren't in the right headspace that day, and like they messed up the paper, and like that just completely threw them off their like career path entirely. That's not. I feel like I strongly advise against making decisions in that headspace. Just like orient yourself, try and understand that CLAT is not the end of the world, and that's about it. That's all I have to say.
Got it. Thanks so much, Aravind. That makes a lot of sense, and that was really, really helpful. So Hemaang, so your journey. So we've covered your journey from 50 to 80. And we've covered the frustrations of that being stuck at 80. So you were talking about the mental changes when we were talking before recording. So what were those changes that really made a difference?
Right. So I guess some of the things that stood out most to me, and like if you think about it, it is something that is elementary, and it is something that is written right before you start every section in a CLAT mock, or be it CLAT itself, that you just have to focus on what's written in the passage. Do not think about anything else. The real world literally does not matter when it comes to the passage. It's the passage, and the passage in isolation, that is the only thing that matters. And while again it feels like it's elementary, you really have to train that you have to train your eye to trying to make note of that and actively keeping track of that. So that was one thing, not bringing any assumptions about the passage itself to the table. And the second thing that was really important, like my strategy with respect to the reading sections, was that while you're attempting questions, try to pick the most proximate answer, in the sense that the answer requires you to bring the least number of assumptions to the table. So let's say like there's a particular sentence in the passage and that leads to you to a particular answer option, and you don't have to, add any further logical leap for arriving to that answer. So in all likelihood, that answer is going to be the right answer. But now let's say there's two answers where there's one logical leap involved, and for another answer, you have to assume two things. So of course, the one that requires the lesser leaps, the better that is. Right. So that is another thing with respect to my mindset that really helped me. And this isn't something strictly related to my mindset, but about the thing that Aravind said, that he shifted his clock like 5 minutes aage. So this is a tip that I think you gave me, that attempt, like, just basically think that in the exam you're not going to have 1 hour, you're not going to have 120 minutes at best. You'll have 1 hour 15 minutes. Realistically, you have like 1 hour 40 minutes or 1 hour 35 minutes.
Yes,
because you have to sort of account for exigencies that could arrive while you're giving the exam.
You have to
panic, and you have to.
This is what I tell my students, that it's not a 2 hour exam. It's a 1 hour 40
Yeah, exactly.
exam.
Yeah, exactly. And the reason so while I think this advice worked for me in my context, I wouldn't necessarily consider it as exactly consistent advice. This could go either way. So just sort of try to figure out if it works for you or not. So for a good chunk of time, and I think especially April onwards, I gave most of my mocks with the timer of 1 hour 45 minutes. Right. So initially, of course, it was a bloodbath. It was a massacre. I could not, like, for a couple of mocks, my score actually
being on those calls with you where you were just like, this is not working out.
Yeah, exactly. So for a couple of mocks, my score actually fell to like 60 or even 75, like from the high 80s. So it was jarring, but gradually what I figured out was that if I'm able to maintain a consistent speed, maybe it'll vary across passages a little bit, I'll still be able to finish sections in like 25 minutes, like if it's for English or critical reasoning, or if it's for legal within 35 minutes. So like I don't need to have that much of a time stretch, so I can reduce my time in certain sections and give a little bit more time to other sections. So gradually the time came down by itself, and that helped me on the day of the exam a lot. So as I think I already mentioned that I took 35 minutes for solving English, because like I think when you start the exam, it does throw you off a little bit, right? So in my attempt to regroup from the 35 minutes that are taken from English, I had to speed through logical and CR, through logical and legal. Right. And because I knew that I had done that a lot of times in previous mocks, it wasn't as challenging or as anxiety ridden as it would have been if I hadn't done it. Maybe there wouldn't have been a material change in the manner I would have attempted, but just having that added assurance that I've done this before, I can do this again, made a huge difference with respect to the paper.
I think this answers the question of coachable versus not coachable. I think the real value that coaching provides is putting you in the situation of, I've done this before enough times so that when you sit in the exam hall, you're not thinking about what you need to do. Exactly. You're just executing on what needs to be done and preparing for what needs to happen. So how did you move forward from 80 then?
So again, like the most important tool with respect to my prep, like from moving from 80 to maybe 100, because I don't think I touched 110 regularly at all. Like I touched 110.5 I think once, and that was my highest mock score, and that's that. So just moving from like covering that 20 mark gap, it just involved a lot of analysis of my mocks, and really detailed analysis, to the extent that I was being pedantic about it. That I need to
someone on the other end of those calls, yes. Yeah,
exactly. So I need to I figure this out to the bitter end, that agar galti hui hai to exactly kyun hui hai, I need to figure this out at any cost. So just going through that process over and over again made it clearer for me that like these are clear strands where I can figure out that I'm making mistakes along these lines. So just doing that over and over again helped me bridge that gap.
Got it.
It was a sort of circuitous ramble if I think about it right now, what I just did, but in essence, this is just what it is.
No, absolutely. No, I'm not saying absolutely to the last part. I'm saying absolutely and I started this episode by talking about the effort you put in and the thoroughness of your preparation. And I think it's a great place to continue that compliment to you, which is where a lot of, if you need to, I spoke in an earlier episode about not taking long with your mock analysis. Not taking long with your mock analysis for the sake of it. Don't go over every question. But but really get to the root cause of your mistakes so that you don't and have a game plan for not making them again, to ensure that you can not make them again, and have a tangible path forward and a successful path forward. All right. So I know, so there's some lot of great tactical subject specific advice that you guys can give. So you, like Aravind, what you already covered a lot in GK and newspaper and stuff like that.
If I may interject just for 1 second so that this
Yeah.
advice doesn't get lost, with respect to your GK prep,
Yeah.
I think one tool that could help a lot is the Indian Express explained articles.
Yes.
So Sumedh, I'm pretty sure you know him already. So his GK prep primarily just relied upon newspapers and the Indian Express explained articles and Drishti IS once in a while, and he ended up having a great
he killed it.
GK score.
Yeah,
exactly. So one of those reasons is that he reads very eclectic, like he reads from everywhere, and so because of that, his GK score improved a lot.
Right.
And again, the Indian Express explained articles as well. And I think sometimes they do a better job of covering the news comprehensively as compared to the Hindu. And they ask, it has more CLAT specific GK, if that's even a category you can put it into. So I think it's an underutilized tool. So even if you're reading the Hindu, just go onto the Indian Express website, go through the explained articles. And if there's a paywall, like there's this site called 12feet.io, you can just add that extension in the place of HTTPS :// so you'll be able to bypass the paywall.
Okay. Awesome. What's it called? Sorry.
12feet.io. I'll type it out in the comments.
Sure. I can use that. So you just opened up the world of the New Yorker to me again. So that's great. So awesome. So
who exactly were we talking about? Who used to read the Indian Express articles? Sumedh. Because I really want to stress upon that. Like, he's doing it right, because the most important thing about reading, like, because I can say I read a lot, right? But if your reading is not diverse, you will suffer a lot in the sense that CLAT, the passages that come, like it can come from philosophy, it comes from science and tech, economics, anything, right? You need to be you're better off if you're used to reading different types of passages. So I mean, like, I can read like a whole series of like Harry Potter novels, and then I go to like, I don't know, you get what I'm saying? That wouldn't really count as reading. Obviously, it'll help you with your lexical caliber, but like, even then, I would say you're when you make those, exactly. When the diversity that you have in your reading is going to help you a lot in
your diet.
An exam like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Correct.
In your reading diet, absolutely, without a doubt, absolutely, without a doubt. So yes, and Sumedh, third time being mentioned officially on the podcast. He is doing it right, and he helps me learn more often. And I want, not that, but he helps me learn often, and I gotta talk to him. Yeah.
Definitely get him on the podcast.
A little unfortunate, not. Unfortunately, it didn't work out as well for him in some ways, but yeah. So any so CR especially, or otherwise other subjects, any subject specific advice, Hema?
So I guess for GK, Aravind covered it pretty comprehensively and pretty well.
Absolutely.
So for CR again, what I will say is that when you're starting out your prep, expect a horrid CR score.
Yeah.
So like even across, you can expect it to be like 3 or 4 or 5. So, and again, don't be frightened by it, don't be scared by it. You just need to figure out why you went wrong in the ways that you did. And a lot of times, you've not done questions that are along similar lines, you might be very thrown off by the pattern. Like, how do I even identify an assumption? Like, everything's there in the passage. I'm not supposed to bring any outside information. So why is there an assumption here even in the first place? So those things might feel a little bit confusing and counterintuitive, but again, if you persist, you will be able to, tide over them. GMAT Club is an amazing tool that you can use, and after a certain point, you'll actually start to enjoy attempting those questions. Like, for a lot of questions, the explanations are actually really well thought out, and just attempt 700 level CR questions. Like the 600 and 500 level questions are a little bit too easy. So even if you're a complete beginner, just started with the 700 level questions. You might get them wrong initially a couple of times, but then once you've figured out how they're working, they become really easy and fun to solve. So, and don't try to do more than like, again, personally, I would say don't try to do more than like 20 questions a day from GMAT Club, because you're also trying to properly go over the explanations themselves.
Yes.
So ultimately, you might end up spending like 3 or 4 minutes per question. Like solving it will take a minute or less than that, and going over the explanation might take 2 or 3 minutes. It depends. So you might not be able to realistically do a lot of them. I'm sorry, my throat's a little bit.
I want to offer you pani, but I realized with thousands of
मैं
people.
लेकर आता हूँ अभी, give me 1 second.
Yeah. So, So, looking at Aravind, he's like, Acha, so this is how you prepare for the CLAT.
I wanted to just touch upon the fact that GMAT it's a wonderful like everything associated with GMAT, the materials, the way you solve the paper, that is really useful for CLAT.
Absolutely.
Because I remember, I mean, this might be very tacky to say, but back when I started feeling that inclination towards our subjects, my dad got me this one Pearson book of like GMAT. I think I was in 8th grade.
Yes.
And that was more to do with verbal reasoning, but like that book honestly really oriented me.
No, I had the exact same experience. I picked up for the CLAT, for my CLAT, I picked up a Pearson GMAT verbal reasoning.
It's very helpful.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's definitely something you can look into. And like the reason I bring up the fact the 8th grade thing is because when you especially in a subject like CR, when you start preparing, I feel like you need to orient your thinking, your thought process in a way that's conducive to answering those questions. Because if you start answering questions in a way that like if you're adding a lot of out of the passage, out of the boundaries, those kind of thoughts come into play, that'll really mess up the way you prep. Obviously it sounds like very redundant, but like
it's very true,
very fun. Like when you start preparing itself, introducing these things, I feel like will help you a lot. And I swear I had like a really, really important point, but like it just slipped out of my mind. But like when you even with speed and time, like speed and like managing time, when you start preparing, I'm not sure if this is true for everyone, but like I personally had a thing where I would go out of my way to solve the question. I would spend my time on the question. I would get it right, but I wouldn't think about the time. So I feel like when you're starting itself, a lot of people like to do okay, you know what, I'll get it right and then I'll do it fast.
You can't do that. Yeah.
You can't do that. Absolutely don't do that, because when you start going with that I'll get it right mindset, you're not going to be able to do it fast. So start trying to do it fast anyway, and then try to get it right.
You build the muscle memory of speed first.
Speed, exactly. That's something you need to be comfortable with.
Right.
And you see, absolutely, like you need to be thinking completely. And another very important part about CR that I found a lot of difficulty in. I mean, I don't have a good solution to it, but it panned out in the exam. I had a lot of difficulty trying to, when you say what is an assumption, what is part of the passage, obviously there are some things that you have to assume and there are some things that you don't, right? But the boundary that you draw, what can be assumed, what can't, that is that factor that you need to understand to really get those CR questions right. Once you start getting that correct, once you start in that zone, that's when you start getting the CR answers correct. Until then, you're going to be way off, and you're not going to understand why you got them wrong. Like how is if this question is correct, applying the same principle here, why isn't this correct? Like that's the thought that I used to have. And I feel like understanding that boundary, which is what can be assumed, what can't, in the context of the passage, is something you really have to understand.
Absolutely. And I think we're very lucky that we do a good job of that at Target Success. But before we get to that, Hemaang, so CR, you're talking about GMAT Club. Any other specific resources or any other specific tips that you want to give?
So like just a slight tip. Again, it's pretty elementary advice, but when you're solving CR questions, don't try to get to the right answer. Try getting through the wrong answers first. So cut and slash through them, eliminate them, and then you will probably arrive at the right answer by itself. And that is a tip that actually helped me a lot in CLAT as well. So like after doing like one passage, I was figuring out ki if I'm going to, scout for the right answer, I'm going to take way too much time. So I just immediately shifted on to eliminating answers. And that made the entire process of solving those 30 questions a lot quicker and a lot more accurate and a lot more confident as well.
Correct.
So that is one thing that you really need to focus on. And the second thing is, this is a slightly sneaky thing. Like it's not exactly sneaky, but the consortium has sort of started to add more context to the questions in CR itself.
Yeah.
So you'll find that like, okay, weaken this particular statement, and then they'll actually reference a statement. It just won't be like weaken the argument of the author. Like it won't be sweeping statements like that. So in a sense, it's easier because you know which statement to look for, but then it's harder in the sense that a lot of people have accustomed themselves to looking at the overall gist of the passage and then trying to weaken or strengthen it. So just pay attention to the question, and they've done this in legal as well.
Yes,
right. They've done this in legal a lot. So like I remember that with this one particular passage in legal this year, it was like 1.5 pages long.
Yeah.
The passage itself was like half a page, and the questions themselves then took like another 1 page entire.
Massive.
Yeah. So in that case, it was more important to, properly look to the questions and figure out where the important information lay.
Correct.
So you have to be quick at leaning through the information that you actually require, and then, eliminating the options that you don't need. Because again, if you try to look for the right answer, you'll waste your time.
Absolutely. This means you got to. Yeah.
I know exactly which one you're talking about. Is that magistrate, the sub, the internet.
And the most fucky part was that this was my first passage. So as soon as I did it in like my particular set, I was like, "Mera to ho gaya banta thar. I'm not getting through this paper. The legal section is way too lengthy."
Right.
But fortunately, the other passages weren't as bad.
Right. No, so great points there. Use a process of elimination. And this may seem stupidly simple, but not enough. It may seem so simple that it's stupid to mention. But I can tell you that not enough people do enough of it, which is read the question you're going to answer. Answer the question that is being asked.
Exactly. And I feel like the reason that this needs to be mentioned is because the CLAT, ever since the new pattern started, the concept of passages really deviates from the when you start, because you stop focusing on the questions and you focus too much on the passage.
Exactly.
And when you lose track of the question, you will start messing up, and that's not a habit you want to inculcate.
Exactly.
So
in
you
fact,
need to
I
start
suggest going a question first approach, which is read the questions first and then go to the passage.
Definitely.
Different things work for different people. Any last piece of advice or any last questions for me in that context, but any last piece of advice that you guys want to give? I mean, this has been a real treasure trove of information for students. So many doubloons here. So any last, like one thing you want to tell future students, or that you haven't perhaps mentioned so far by any chance, or you want to re-emphasize something that you've already said?
Yeah, definitely the thing about mock scores, because your morale is very important when you give the exam, and it doesn't matter how bad your mock scores are. I personally know someone who was in their 60s who made it to NUJS, and it's not, I cannot emphasize enough how important it is that you ignore your mock scores when you go into that exam hall. Those 2 hours you haven't done a mock ever. That's the exam that you prepared for. That's the only thing that matters. Do that.
Don't game the mocks also. You brought out.
Don't game, definitely, yeah. If you start figuring out a pattern within the mocks and then exploit that to get a better score in the mocks, you're shooting yourself in the foot, because that's not going to work for CLAT. So don't do that. And that's something I feel like, because I personally, I was in a lot of these like Telegram groups, Discord groups, where people discuss these mock scores, right, and very, very religiously, and like that's something I really need to mention. Like mocks, obviously, they're a tool. That's it. You need to think of them as that.
Absolutely. Hemaang, any last words?
Yeah, like
any last words?
Any last words? With one eye open, man.
Yeah.
It's basically a reiteration of whatever Aravind has said. Like maybe a slight extension that, you need to keep your morale right. You need to keep, your head right. You need to be very kind to yourself throughout the process of prep. And please don't try to think of it as okay, I'm being too kind to myself, therefore I'm not serious enough about my preparation, therefore mera analyst to nahi hoga. So like that's a horrible
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's a horrible
Right.
spiral.
Absolutely.
So just
Absolutely.
remember that,
Yeah.
again, like while CLAT is a very arbitrary exam, I think to a certain extent, but to a very limited extent, it does provide a sliver into, the sort of life you might have as a lawyer. And of course, I think Janardhan sir can attest to that, and that it is a very stressful life.
Yeah.
And like, you have to work long hours, you have to take care of your
You'll
mind
be
as
on
well.
your feet. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So if CLAT, is even again a slight representation of that, so some of those principles might still apply. So you need to take care of your mind like that to even try to do well on the exam. Like if you exhaust yourself to the point of collapsing, that isn't the way to go about it for this exam.
Exactly. And
Absolutely.
another thing that like this is not related to like preparing or giving the exam, but like as opposed to a lot of other exams, when you prepare for an exam like CLAT, you come out of it a much better citizen. Or
Yeah.
Oh,
because
for sure.
like when you're studying for JEE, there's like a lot of formulas and stuff,
Yeah.
and that's the only takeaway from that, right? But when you study for an exam like CLAT, the way you analyze, the way you think, everything changes for the better, and
Right.
that's like doesn't matter what your result is. That's a very good takeaway to have by preparing for an exam like that, and I feel like that should be said to a lot of aspirants.
Like there's
Absolutely.
aspects of my prep that I genuinely resented, but there were aspects that I enjoyed a lot as well.
Yeah.
So like
It's a lot of
a
fun
lot of
preparing for
time,
CLAT. Like I personally really enjoy it.
see, it's fun, but it's also really stressful. So I don't
It's
really know
stressful.
which way to lean.
I mean, I'm a PCM student, so this is like my this is
Yeah.
what I do in my break. So
Yeah. And
class
Hemang's
prep
like,
is
I'm like, what are you talking about? Yeah.
what is this?
Yeah.
See,
Uh,
I'm not taking away from the fact that it isn't fun. I'm just saying, it constitutes a little bit more than just being fun.
Yeah.
true.
Right. So this was definitely our longest episode, and I'm actually sad that it's not longer. I could talk to you guys for hours and I have 1,000 more
It was a
questions.
lot of fun,
Yeah.
Yeah,
It was
it
really
was.
great. And we're missing Viraj for sure.
for
Um,
sure.
yeah, valid. Yeah.
Valid.
Yeah. But and we could have gotten a lot more with Viraj as well, of course. But if you want to learn the formula for mock analysis, if you want to learn the formulas for GK, if you want to learn the formula for logic that I spoke to Hemang about quite a bit, is talk to me, reach out to me. You can reach out to me on WhatsApp at 81475800097. And we're taking a new batch starting next month for just logical and legal classes at a very low price point. And reach out to me about just with any questions you have. But if you like what we're doing here, Target Success is offering a different way to coach students. We prepare you for the exam, not for the subjects. So feel free to reach out to me about that. You can rewind and see my number again. Yeah, and especially Aravind, you don't have my number. We haven't connected before. Hemang, if you don't have it now, if
Yeah,
you,
I'll pass it on, sure.
thanks so much. There'll be a point a few weeks from now. I see this. I see this less happening with you guys. But there will be a moment at some point in your law school career where you may feel like you made a mistake. Get me out of here. So, and any other questions that you do have, as Aravind, you mentioned, you'd have like 100 other questions once this call ends. So if Hemang bothered me and that worked out to his credit. And that tenacity is required. So reach out to me and let's and I'll be happy to answer those questions and help you out in your law school journey as well. Yeah. So thanks so much for your time, guys. It was 2.5 hours. I mean, thank you for your patience. Thank you for your time. I cannot thank you so much. I hope we have you back. No, not that we have you back. I hope we find the time to do this again in as substantive a way soon enough, because it was a lot of fun. And best of luck for the boards and.
I need it.
So much, sir.
Yeah.
Of course.
Accounts की बात चाहिए मैं पूछ ले मैं कर लूँ. Economics.
नहीं अभी मैथ्स के लिए लग चाहिए मेरे को अकाउंट्स त्याग दिया मैंने so that's
अच्छा
nice.
ठीक है. Best of luck for maths. Best of luck.
Thank you so much, sir.
Best of luck, Aravind, for your
Thank you, sir. It was a lot of. It didn't even feel like 2.5 hours. Honestly, a lot of fun.
Yeah, same.
That's
I
really
think
great. I know chemistry is killing you right now, but I actually have a hack to solve chemistry as well. Not that I took commerce, But I'm helping my brother with his chem prep right now. It's weakest subject. And yeah, I have a hack to helping you study for it if you're interested.
Yeah, I definitely need this hack because electrochemistry is going to be the end of me.
Oh,
I'm
really?
not playing.
Okay.
Organic and physical is.
That's
Oh my
that's
God.
the entire syllabus.
Yeah. So I'm done for it in chem. I'm so done. I hate chemistry so much, but man,
It's very unfortunate. It's too much. But anyway, so thank you guys so much for your time. Have a good night. And
good to so.
Thank you so much, sir.
thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Bye bye.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.